on duty. I was just glancing at the popular vote. Yes, NBC News has projected that Joe Biden has won the election, but 70 million Americans voted for Donald Trump, 74 million approximately for Joe Biden. Where is the White House on this call, and where is the president right now?
Physically, Savannah, he is not here at the White House. President Trump, right now, as this race is being called by NBC News, is at his golf course in Virginia. This is not the rebuke of Trumpism that some of the president's critics had hoped, but it is a defeat for the president, and it is one that over the last 24 hours, aides, advisors, and other sources that I've talked to have come to a realization about. I believe you're looking at some video of the president in the motorcade on the way to that golf course earlier today. The president, even as recently as within the last hour, has been defiant about this election's results, tweeting that he won this election. He clearly has not. That is not the case either with the popular vote or, of course, with now that 270 electoral college vote threshold. A tweet so misleading and incorrect that Twitter again slapped a warning label on it, basically hiding it to prevent it from spreading further. You're taking a look now at the scene that is just outside the White House where I am, and it is people in Black Lives Matter Plaza. That's what it's called here in Washington. It's just outside the fencing that's been put up at the park in front of the White House. That crowd has been getting bigger, and when the race was called, there was a cheer that erupted from that plaza. I can tell you that as I departed here at, I don't know, midnight last night, they were blasting news reports of the race. There, folks outside in D.C. are listening to the returns, and they have been for the last day or so. Elsewhere in D.C., you heard cowbells, you heard honking, you heard cheering. It's obviously a very Democratic city, politically leaning for people here, so that is not particularly surprising. I will say that for the Trump campaign, we have heard nothing yet. I have reached out, our team has reached out to contacts in the campaign for reaction here, but the legal fight, their perspective is that the president, and we know this, is going to keep on fighting until he has exhausted every possible recourse. In fact, as we speak, up in Philadelphia, there's set to be a news conference with some of the president's top advisors, Rudy Giuliani, Corey Lewandowski, Pam Bondi, about the legal push that they're mounting in that state. It looks like an uphill climb. The campaign so far has presented no evidence to back up any of its claims, not just to the news media, but to judges who have dismissed these cases in other states like Georgia and Michigan. This is a blow, obviously, for President Trump. It is a reality that he is going to need to face. I was told at about 10 o'clock last night by a couple of folks close to the president that he understood that he saw the writing on the wall, the writing that is now on the wall this morning here on NBC News as we've called this race. The question is, what happens next? I understand that he has no plans to concede until the recounts, the canvassing, the certification process has been finished in these battleground states. The latest deadline for that is December 1st, I believe. But anybody waiting for a concession from President Trump is going to be waiting quite a while longer, I believe. This is a president who has been inaccurately, incorrectly, and misleadingly claiming that this election has been, in his view, stolen from him. Again, there is no evidence of the fraud that the president is talking about, no evidence of widespread fraud or systemic problems. It is likely that he will continue to keep up that messaging and that narrative. Now, will he speak with reporters? Will we be able to see the president, the current president of the United States, at some point today? It is possible. There is always a group of people traveling with the president. It is not out of the realm of possibility that pool, that group of reporters, could be called as the president makes remarks. We are still working to find out what the plan is, when he might come back to the White House here. We do expect that, obviously, at some point throughout the day. But at this moment, this is the worst case scenario that the Trump campaign had been bracing for. I think people around the president's orbit knew this was coming, and were trying to prepare him for this news as well, Savannah.
Yeah, and Casey, you've been talking to your sources on the Republican.
Well, it's a fairly lengthy statement, Savannah, Chuck, and Lester. It is about 3.5 paragraphs. I won't read the entire thing, but I will read you some highlights, which is that the president is suggesting that Joe Biden is rushing to falsely pose as the winner, and that the president is alleging his media allies are trying hard to help him, insisting the election is far from over. This is, frankly, the statement that I think many of the president's critics and even some around him expected him to put out when the race was ultimately called, as the direction it appeared to be heading in over the last 24 hours or so, for Joe Biden. The president is resisting the results of the election, despite the fact that there has been no widespread evidence of fraud. He is insisting that he will continue moving forward with legal challenges in the courts, and he is blaming, as he has often done over the last 4 years that he's been in office, the news media for something that he simply does not like. The president, as we mentioned, is currently on his golf course. As I'm going through the rest of the statement, the president insists he's not going to rest until the American people have what he describes as an honest vote count. Again, this election process has worked exactly as expected. It took a little while. We knew it was going to take a little while. As Chuck knows, we knew it was going to take a while because of all those mail-in ballots, the ballots that in some states have been gone through. There will be recount fights likely. The Trump campaign has already threatened to do a recount in Wisconsin. We know that's where Georgia has been headed. But this is President Trump, true to what we have seen from him since the campaign started for him back in 2015, 2016, defiant even in the face of the reality that this presidential race has slipped out of his fingers. It is out of his grasp. He will fight to try to get it back. He cannot. It appears the writing is on the wall. Joe Biden has the 270 electoral votes he needs. The question now, can the president actually do anything about that if he refuses to concede? Concession is not a legal requirement. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that President Trump needs to deliver a formal speech calling for unity and handing the reins of power over to Joe Biden. That is a tradition. And if there's one thing we know about this president is that he has not been traditional in the past, and he has bucked that at every turn. I will tell you that there is a fair amount of Monday morning quarterbacking going on here. There is finger pointing now, as we have seen for quite a while with this White House, finger pointing over what some critics see as a sloppy strategy. People even close to the White House concerned that this legal push was a long shot from the very beginning, wondering why there wasn't a more sort of forceful face and forceful figure heading that push, given that was where it seemed to be headed even Monday, Tuesday, last week, as it looked like the race was going to be very close. So the factionalism is happening here. The question is what the president does next. Does he lay low for a couple days? I would frankly be surprised to see that, given the defiance of the statement now out from the Trump campaign. I will say, too, as the transition now is upon us, we have, I believe, 74, if my math is right, 75 days until Inauguration Day. President Trump is still the president. And this transition is going to be very closely watched. It is possible that the president will try to shake things up. It has long been discussed, long been speculated that perhaps he would fire people like his defense secretary, Mark Esper. NBC News has reported that Secretary Esper has prepared a letter of resignation, according to 3 defense officials. There are questions of whether the president will try to use these last 2+ months in office to issue a series of executive orders, for example, trying to use the power that he still has on his way out the door, essentially, perhaps issue some pardons to people in his orbit. So it could be a turbulent couple of months until the middle of January, when President-elect Joe Biden will be sworn in just down Pennsylvania Avenue from where we are.
The statement is highly troubling.
Well, it is, and it is also completely of a piece with what he's been signaling.
Hearing any reaction from those in the president's inner circle, Hallie?
We are this morning, this afternoon, Lester, and a couple of things here. It has largely, I will tell you, been radio silence at this point. I think that I get the sense people are reeling from what I think folks knew was coming, but it is still the reality that they are now facing, save for 2 things, right? One, that inflammatory and misleading statement put out by the president this morning. The other, a press conference happening right now as we speak, actually up in Philadelphia, up in Pennsylvania, where the president's advisors are making baseless claims of fraud and continue to do so, with, interestingly, Rudy Giuliani confirming now what we have been reporting for the past 24 hours, that the president is not going to concede with this legal fight now ongoing. I have to tell you, though, there are others who get where we are right now, who understand where the Trump White House is. One person close to the White House called this the great anticlimactic ending that folks have been seeing for several days. The focus now is really shifting to people thinking about themselves, their own future, is with a White House official telling us that a lot of people are coming to terms with this. They're starting to think through the transition, where they're going to go starting in January. And a senior campaign aide lets our team know, too, that there is still some work to do. As we've been talking about, and as you've been talking about there on set, the question is, how does this transition look for President Trump? He is likely, based on my experience in the last 5 years covering him from Inauguration Day in 2017, he's likely to fume. He is likely to continue to push conspiracy theories about the election results. It may be a turbulent couple of months here. I will tell you, too, Lester, right when the race was called by NBC News and other outlets, you couldn't hear what was happening on Black Lives Matter Plaza on the park just outside of the White House where I am. You can sure hear it now. We have been hearing more honking, more air horns, more cheering. It is a loud situation. The president, this is the scene. You can see actually it's filled up. And just to give you some perspective, on the top of your screen, You can see there's a fence and then a grassy area. That's Lafayette Park, which is just to the north of where I'm standing at the White House. It has been barricaded. The gates and the fencing have been put up, non-scalable, officials say, because of the expectation that this would exactly be the scene on election night. We had to wait 5 days for that, right? Took a while to get here. But this is why the reinforcements have been put in place around the White House, because of the expectation of potentially protests or demonstrations like the sort of celebration that we are seeing right now. At some point, the president's going to come back to the White House, Lester. He's at the golf course now. That's just across the Potomac River in Virginia. He didn't take the helicopter. He doesn't do that since it's such a close trip. He drives through the streets in his motorcade, and he will have to motorcade back through the streets of Washington with this scene visible to him. This is not a president who often gets glimpses of life outside the bubble, so to speak. He confronted that a couple of times recently. I'm thinking most notably over at the Supreme Court after the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, when people booed he and the First Lady when the two of them showed up after Justice Ginsburg was laid to rest in her there at the Supreme Court. But it is going to be, I think, a real potentially jarring moment for President Trump to see how the country is reacting to his loss as he continues to strike, frankly, this very defiant tone.
All right.